Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the junkyard crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts. This is a 1964 Oldsmobile Jetstar 88. Now you got to remember, I was born in 1964, so I'm 58 years old, and so is this car. But 64 was also a very big year for small Oldsmobiles. The A-body platform arrived in 64, the Cutlass, the F85, and over at Pontiac land, the Le Mans, the GTO, and of course the Skylark at Buick. So the mid-sized Oldsmobiles and GM models really came on strong. But let's not forget that in 64, a full 73% of all Oldsmobile sales were big cars like this. Only 27% with a new intermediate. So the big size cars were still the rulers, but this one has a special surprise. Along those lines, we got to remember the full-size Oldsmobiles were the Jetstar 88, this thing here, the base car, Jetstar 1, Dynamic 88, Super 88, Starfire, and 98. So what makes the Jetstar 88 different from the Jetstar 1? Well, $79. And we'll get into that in a moment. Now this one here had a base price of $2,992, which was $70 less again than the Jetstar 1, and the difference is going to be under the skin. But first up, this is a holiday coupe, which is Oldsmobile speak for a two-door hardtop. You can see here the graceful roof, kind of looks like a 62 Chevy Impala. Similar skin with sort of the embossed convertible roof in the raised position kind of a thing happening right there. A stylish car, not a bubble top, but again, this one here, 1964, no more bubbles anywhere at GM. Inside, we see the bench seat interior, column shifted automatic, which was optional. Extra cost, this would have had a 3-speed manual up on the column in base trim. And a pretty well-preserved interior, if you can excuse all that rust. But look at the padded dash up here, somewhat of a safety nod here back in 64, the very beginnings of finally some consideration for occupant safety in crashes. This one does not have seat belts. I see no sign of them. They were still an option in 64. They weren't mandated for another year or two. Now inside this one we do see Motor Trend magazine, and we all know that Motor Trend never makes mistakes, with the exception of canceling Roadkill's Junkyard Gold. Canceled? What do you mean we're canceled? Just saying. Anyway, this is April 64, and we can see on the cover here we have tests of the Valiant and the Europe, and here of course old Jetstar 88. So let's have a peek and see what they have to say about this automobile. Here is Jetstar 88. Got the fireworks, it's a Motor Trend test. That's a 4-door hardtop right there. But here it says here, the new Jetstar 88 series. Although the new series uses the full-size body and wheelbase, its basic components, engine, brakes, and running gear are shared with the smaller F85. That's the A-body, folks. A brand new lightweight cast iron engine called the Jetfire Rocket and a new 2-speed torque converter automatic transmission, the Jetaway, are also Jetstar 88 items. You got to remember that the full-size olds, the Jetstar 1 all the way up, had a 394, big cast iron monster. Only the Jetstar 88 came with the mid-size 330. More on that in a second. Beyond that, the brakes. These things actually use smaller brakes than the other full-size olds. Here we go, more Motor Trend right here. And here's talking here about some tests. We can see the skid tests right there, and you know, anti-lock brakes for a long time off, so get ready for plenty of burnt rubber and skid marks. But right here it says here, with smaller drums than any full-size GM model, Jetstar 88's 9.5-inch drums took longer to cool and heated up more quickly than Dynamic or Super 88's 11 inches would have. More on that. We go to the next page, and here we see it. Right here, the brakes on our test car just didn't feel so effective as they should have. Even though the Jetstar is a bigger, heavier car, it shares the 9.5-inch cast iron drums with the F85. Effective area is up this year to 155.6 square inches over 127 for the F85 last year, which was the smaller one. The Dynamic 88 uses 11-inch drums and has 163 square inches of effective lining. So remember, the Jetstar 88 has the A-body suspension. The car pulled to the left and swerved left on hard application, so we took off the drums and found that the secondary lining on the left front shoe had disintegrated, and then all linings were badly glazed from someone else's abuse before we got the car. It's possible it was a press car that maybe Car Life magazine got a hold of and abused. But anyway, Oldsmobile immediately furnished us with another Jetstar 88, again with those 9.5-inch mid-sized drums. We'll have to admit its braking was smoother and more effective than our initial test cars, but even at that, it was only a little better than adequate. After less than 10 miles of hard mountain driving, we managed to stop from 60 miles per hour and 187 feet We came to a halt with the pedal against the steering column and the brakes almost completely faded away. All other full-size GM cars use 11-inch or larger brake drums and have greater effective area than the Jetstar 88. For those who want more than marginal braking, we recommend the optional metallic linings. We go here finally. We see right here, these are the specifications on their test car. Theirs was a 4-barrel equipped to 330. We'll get to that in a second. But right here, here's the brake size, front and rear, 9.5, and again, 118 square inches. Whereas on the one step up Jetstar 1 and others, there were 11-inch drums with 163 square inches of lining. So again, it's crazy to think that the full-size Jetstar 88 and the 88 only, not the Jetstar 1 and above, used the smaller suspension parts from the Cutlass. What were they thinking for a $77 or $70 down charge for the Jetstar 88? Now, getting back to those brakes, this is the front. The rear axle on this thing is gone. That would be a Salisbury axle, not the Hotchkiss that would have been found on a full-size car. So even the A-body rear axle, a little wider, was used on these. But here is, if you know your Oldsmobiles, this is the same wheel as you'd find, say, like on an F85 1964. And this little hub right here, this is the lightweight one for the 9.5-inch drums. And again, this is from the back of one of these things, but this is the classic GM 9.5-inch drum on GTO, SS396, and yeah, Jetstar 88, little tiny things, you know. Now this, we don't want to confuse this. This is the aluminum drum available on GTOs and Buick GS 400s in the mid-60s. And again, it's a good piece, but it too has a 9.5-inch diameter. So it's, you know, it's kind of weird. But again, the mid-size cars weighed probably 500 pounds less than these full-size barges. So what was Oldsmobile thinking, putting the little brakes under these big cars? Even Motor Trend noticed that. Going up here, under the hood. Now, here's where the engine bay tells us a lot. Now, the Jetstar 88, again, the base full-size car, has the 330. Now, this engine here eventually would become the 400, the 455, the 425, etc., seen for the very first time right here in 1964, and most commonly seen on the midsize cars. But again, this was the standard engine right here on the Jetstar 88. It's a 330 cubic inch engine. This one has the 2-barrel carburetor, so it has 230 horsepower. Another $34 would get you the 290 horsepower 4-barrel. And again, we got to remember the Olds 442 in 1964, the very first year, had 310 horsepower from this basic same 330 cubic inch engine. And I got to say too, that if you love your Pontiac Trans Ams, the Pontiac Trans Ams of like 78, 9, 80, like that, or not 80, but late 70s Trans Ams, the 403 was an Oldsmobile V8. But here's what started right here, 1964. And the only way to get the 330 in a full-size Olds was, again, the Jetstar 88 we see right here. Bigger Oldsmobiles, or the Jetstar 1 all the way through the 98, would have had a 394, which is a whole different engine from this thing here. Now, this one does have the power brakes, $43. We can see right there the single pot, no dual circuits till 67. And again, that was $43 extra for the booster. Power steering, $97. Probably well spent. Again, these 330s were very light engines. Thin wall casting technology was in its prime here. These engines are probably 100 pounds lighter than the 394 cast iron monster that would be seen in 64 for the final year. 65, a 400 and a 425 cubic inch version of that 330 would come along. But again, here it is right here. Only the Jetstar 88 has the little 330. Kind of weird. Let's walk down this side here. And yeah, here it is. This is the logo on the front fender that identifies this as the full-size Olds with the mid-sized suspension. That 88 right there. Jetstar 88. It's come down this side, and again, you know, beautiful styling on this thing. Again, the holiday coupe body. We can't open this door. The fender's getting crunchy, but again, these windows, when they go down, it's a full opening here. There's no pillar to obstruct. The rear axle is gone, but what we would see in there would be the 10-bolt Salisbury, which was new in 64, and again, used only on Jetstar 88s. Full size, or the Jetstar 1 onward, would have a Hotchkiss-type dropout rear axle. Very popular with gassers and drag race builders. Okay, let's play What's in the Trunk. Now, I got to remember that if you were going to the drive-in movie, you could probably put 5 or 6 of your buddies inside of here and save $3, so why not? And let's open up the trunk and see what we got. Okay, I think that's the ground. Okay, this thing is rusted so completely that the floor of the trunk is gonzo. But again, this is a body-on-frame car, and this is basically what would have been the spare tire well. Major place here for all your buddies to go to the drive-in. Spare tire probably tucked in up there, I would guess. And again, underside of the ermine white paint. And always, the underside of the deck lid always is the most protected part of any car, and generally gives you a last glimpse of the factory mirror finish paint on this. So that's the story of how in 1964 Oldsmobile had the audacity or the brilliance, you choose, to save people 70 bucks to give them mid-size brakes and suspension under a full-size car in the Jetstar 88. Now, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Mag's YouTube channel and ring the bell so you know when the next video comes out, which is